Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading, and this is our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. I have with me today my frequent co-host, Chris Agelastos, almost my exclusive co-host, actually. So
Are we going to make it
I'm gonna,
official
I think we should. I mean, I really think we should.
at this
I
point?
can't think of,
Okay.
I can't think of anyone else I'd rather sit here and talk finance, economics with, and probably if we really wanted to do those tuning in a treat, we'd start talking about other things in life, and they would be thoroughly entertained or thoroughly discuss it. I don't know. No, I'm
Oh,
teasing. All right. Well, thanks for being here today, Chris. Yet again,
yep.
lots going on, lots and lots and lots going on. We've been our last podcast actually discussing the what's going on with the dock workers
Mhm.
and some of the disruption there that certainly is hopefully going to be a quickly resolved situation. But now we're going to talk about, and we kind of touched on this in our last podcast as well. The it's a common tendency when something makes the news. It's going to be something that just kind of feeds throughout the day or a few days, maybe a week or so, depending upon what it is. And that's what happened when we started, covering what was going on with the dock workers. But as we mentioned on the last podcast, as any one situation is going on, it's there are like literally six other pans on the stove that are cooking, and
Yeah.
you can't forget about any one of those six because you turn your eye or back on one of them for a second,
hmm
and you've got a problem. They all have to be tended to or minded at the same time in unison, let's call it. And that's what we have here with BRICS is that there's all these things that are taking place that talks about interest rates, talk about inflation, talk about the US dollar, talk about the debt, talk about the deficits, now talk about the dock workers, talk about food in the grocery stores, cars in the car. You go right through the whole gamut of our economy. For anybody who follows the economy whatsoever, these are all just very everyday common topics that are always at work, always at play. Well, BRICS, which has over the course of now the last year really, they have been building building momentum like nobody's business. And this first article that will, and CC, I'll put this up here in a moment if it's not already. BRICS, they're talking about a new world order in progress.
hmm
And when I got into the metals business, I very quickly became familiar with that phrase or that term, new world order. And one of the reasons being is that our currency, the US dollar, is a fiat currency. It is a fiat money. It wasn't always. The US dollar used to have a backing, our currency had a backing by gold and or silver. And we had gold confiscated in 1933. By law, we were required to turn it in. If you had like for instance, a $20 bill in return, you were given a $20 gold, excuse me, if you had a $20 gold piece, you were given a $20 bill.
Right.
And it's interesting. A lot of people don't know what was taking place back then, but the actual world price or world value of gold when this was going on was $35 an ounce. But as citizens, we were required to turn it in, and again, in return, we got a $20 bill. Well, it was in 1935 that this phrase, this Latin phrase, "Novus Ordo Seclorum," I believe that's how you say it, was put on our $1 bill. And the way, if you were to Google this or what have you, all of the conspiracy theorist people would tell you that this was the new world order. This was the
hmm
government coming in to take over. Well, if you look at it, there's a lot of truth to the fact that this is what happened. There was a reason they put that. Our currency had been around for a lot of years prior to that. There was a reason that they put that on there. But that's why it's kind of interesting that with everything that's going on with BRICS, which seems to be not only gaining in popularity by the day, but gaining strength by the day. It's interesting that that phrase has resurfaced again, a new world order or Novus Ordo Seclorum. It's not that they're putting it
hmm
on their currency, but they're saying this new world order is in progress. And as we've talked about, not only is it in progress, I don't see what's standing in its way at this point because again, we have a currency that seemingly is getting weaker by the day because other
Yeah.
nations are now looking to jump on board this alliance known as BRICS. So
Yeah.
tell us more about this new world order, Chris.
Well, you make a good point. What's the saying? History repeats itself, and maybe that's what's happening here. They're currently just I say a 9-member alliance, but they've been growing and recruiting a lot of people. They're expected to make some new announcements in the coming months here about new members that they're letting in. They currently control almost half of the world's oil supply. Right, so that's a pretty dominant group right there. A quarter of the world's GDP, and really the challenge here is that no one nation or another nation's currency has been strong enough to really be a contender against the U.S. and the U.S. dollar. But with this group banding together, all of a sudden, you have to take them seriously, and their goal is all about replacing the dollar's dominance to benefit themselves. Which if you live there, you can't blame them, right? But at the same time, you and I and others in our nation and others even in Europe that rely on the dollar are going to have to deal with the fact that this could cause hyperinflation. It could cause job cuts, issues in the economy, a stock market crash. So it's not just something that's happening overseas that we can say, oh well, that isn't really going to affect us. It's directly affecting our currency, which affects all of us in this country and a lot of others in the rest of the world that also rely on the U.S. dollar. So it is a big deal, and if they succeed and we continue down this path and they continue to grow, New World Order is probably going to be the term that lasts in the history books, another 100 years from now when they're talking about this.
For sure. I completely agree with you. In fact, by the way, if you can see behind me here, right there, that gold,
Mhm.
that's in gold plating, at the actual copy of the 1933 Gold Confiscation Act. So
Oh wow,
uh,
that's cool.
it's it's part of kind of pertinent and relevant to what we do, and
Yeah.
something that was given to me as a gift. And I think it's as I was actually preparing for this podcast, I was sitting there and I turned around and looked. I'm like, well, actually, that's what we're talking about. Actually, that's what we're talking about today. So, anyway, so looking at the second article here,
Yeah.
you know, BRICS chooses gold to power new payment system, challenging the U.S. dollar. And what I find interesting about this is tying it into the first article
Mhm.
is we've kind of gone full circle. Like the U.S. economy was had its issues, certainly, when they had the depression and so on and so forth. But what's interesting is what the government did to basically stabilize the economy is took possession of all the gold. They had to, because the currency that they had put out, because at that time you had a dual system. You could use paper
Mhm.
bills or you could use gold or silver as your currency. By taking possession of all the gold that citizens had, gave them a very strong leg to stand on, and also gave us the ability to put ourselves in a position. And a lot of it happened through OPEC later on in the 70s as well. But
Mhm.
where, because we had that partial backing, our currencies were tied to metal. That's in large part what caused it to become as dominant as it did and as strong as it was throughout the world. And now we've come full circle where
Yeah.
currencies throughout the world have not been denominated or backed in any way by gold, and BRICS now is seizing this opportunity. And if I looking at this article here, in fact, their backing is at 40% of what the actual value of the currency is, and the other 60% being derived from the strength of the various other nations who are participating in
Mhm.
this alliance. And that being said, what you just mentioned a moment ago, Chris, you're absolutely right. Okay, so now they've got 40% that is being backed by gold. That other 60%, even though it's not gold backed, it's currency backed. You are
Mhm.
talking about currencies that basically control half the world's natural resources. And
Right.
so even though it's not a direct tie like you do have with gold, there's a lot of strength in that as well. And that's
Yeah.
something that it begs the question: how on earth can the U.S. dollar even compete with this?
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, 40% gold, that alone is solid. But then if the other 60% is a basket of other currencies, that's well diversified, right? And we always hear in the investment world, be diversified, don't have all your eggs in one basket. Well, that's exactly what they're creating here with their new payment system. They've been stocking up on gold for a while. People that listen to us or watch our program regularly will have heard about us talking about BRICS and the central banks purchasing gold. And so with a 60-40 split there, that's pretty stable. If one of those nations has trouble, you're still okay because you have this basket of currencies. Whereas in the U.S., if you're relying just solely on the U.S. dollar, and there's of course a lot of speculation as to whether or not we even have gold reserves or how much is really there. Not to get into too much conspiracy talk, but they never really want to address it and reassure people. So it does kind of make you wonder. And it makes sense that they would use gold. It's always been able to be readily converted, like you mentioned, into any other currency. It's very liquid, and they're definitely going to give us a run for their money. I mean, they're big enough combined to be a serious threat, and that's what they're doing here. I think they didn't just haphazardly say let's go after the dollar and dethrone it. They've really put a lot of thought and effort into this. They have a plan that they're staying consistent with. And I think that's really the scariest part here, if you will, is just how well organized and thought out, BRICS is being with this operation.
Well, and you bring up an excellent point, Chris, in that the U.S. dollar has reigned supreme, and it's been U.S. dominance, United States dominance, singularly speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And the strength with BRICS is that you don't have a singular reliance on a nation, on one nation, to propel that currency and the value of that currency. You have the strength of, well, right now we're talking a few dozen nations, but at the summit meeting I think that just happened. Yes, the summit meeting, they had basically maybe it's coming up in a few weeks actually.
Yeah,
They
in
had
October.
they had yeah they had a half the nations of the world are going to be there, and
Yeah,
they are, for those who they allow in. The point being is that the strength of the multi currencies, multi economies, multi resources that is together. They're not looking to just singularly take one currency to try and compete with the dollar. They are taking the resources and pooling them together, and that's what makes it strong. Number one, and
yeah,
number two, why it's been a kind of an easy decision for those nations to make to jump on board. So
right.
yeah, this has been an interesting topic to cover, and it just doesn't seem. It seems like the gas pedal just keeps getting pushed a little harder with every report or every little bit of news that comes out about it. And we'll continue to watch it. And for
Hmm.
those of you tuning in, if you'd like some more information about BRICS or other things pertaining to what's going on with gold backing BRICS and what's happening with gold in general, feel free and contact our office. You see our number and our link there on the screen. If you're not subscribed to this podcast, please do so, as we will be covering this, I'm sure, for the next several weeks and few months ahead
Yeah.
at a minimum. So thanks for tuning in. And Chris, thanks for all the input there. And we'll look
Yep.
forward to having you again with us real soon.
Yep. Thanks a lot.